Week 6 is officially under wraps, and today I got you guys covered with my top 10 pickups entering Week 7 of fantasy football. But before we go into the official top 10, we go through the should-be roster tier. Guys that are rostered in over 50% of sleeper leagues, but if they are available in your league, make sure you go and pick them up. I mean, Tyrone Tracy would be the overall #1 on this list if he was available in less than 50% of sleeper leagues. He is rostered in more of them, but again, if he is available in your league, he showed RB1 level upside in that game on Sunday Night Football. Devin Singletary still dealing with that groin injury, and I think there's a real possibility with what Tracy's shown in the last 2 weeks that even when Singletary returns, this ends up being Tracy's backfield. Again, rookie player showing the level of receiving upside he did on Sunday Night Football, between the tackles upside he showed 2 weeks ago. At this point, I think he's a better running back than Singletary, and I think Brian Dable is slowly catching on to that. Same thing goes for the Packers wide receivers. If they are available in your leagues, make sure you pick them up. Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson. Dontavian Wicks ruled out for this game with a shoulder injury. He is currently listed as week to week. Could be missing, 2-3 weeks of time. And without Dontavian Wicks in the fold, these two Packers wide receivers, with how explosive this Green Bay passing offense has been, receive a major bump in fantasy value. Same thing goes for Jalen Tolbert. He's rostered in 51% of sleeper leagues at the time I'm recording this, but the Cowboys are entering bye week. Maybe people with Jalen Tolbert needing a ton of depth right now, do drop him in your league. If Jalen Tolbert's available in your wire, he is the #2 wide receiver for the Cowboys, and I understand that while people are very pessimistic with the Cowboys moving forward with how they looked against Detroit, we saw the same story last year. I mean, the Cowboys before and after their bye week were a night and day offense. So if we're potentially getting a better offense moving forward out of the bye week than what we saw in the first few weeks, Jalen Tolbert already established himself as the clear wide receiver 2 on this team, even when Brandon Cooks was in the lineup. So I'm very optimistic moving forward. Again, if he is dropped in your league, he would be worthy of a spot on this list. Antonio Gibson, running back of the New England Patriots, he didn't look good on Sunday, but with that being said, Ramondre Stevenson still dealing with an injury. Ramondre Stevenson has not gotten good words from the coaching staff overall, and Antonio Gibson showed bell cow level usage in that game. Again, I expect this offense to be better moving forward. You guys will hear my rant on Demario Douglas in a second, but if Gibson is available, I think he needs to be rostered in the majority of leagues, because with Drake May taking over, if he is the starting running back of the New England Patriots, he's got top 30 level upside at the running back position. And then finally, Alexander Mattison, same type of deal. He is currently the starter for the Raiders. Zamir White is dealing with that injury. And Alexander Mattison, although he hasn't been the most efficient player in the league so far this year, does get a good workload, does get some good receiving usage. Is it the most consistent production in the world? Absolutely not. But if you are in a pinch, especially through bye weeks, I think Alexander Mattison is a serviceable RB3 for the time being. But moving on to my #1 pick of the week, we got Juju Smith-Schuster, wide receiver of the Kansas City Chiefs, only still rostered in 33% of sleeper leagues. And when I went to go record this video, I was assuming that he would be in the should-be roster tier, because I don't think there's any way that Juju Smith-Schuster should be available in 2/3 of your leagues. Juju Smith-Schuster absorbed the Rashid Rice role in Week 5 with Rashid Rice out of the lineup, and that was only on 66% of the snaps, because what we saw is that this guy commanded 24% of the targets and a 28% targets per route run rate on, like I said, only 66% of the team routes, 20 PPR points. If he becomes a full-time player out of the bye, we're looking at a guy that can be a consistent wide receiver 3 or better in fantasy, which is why he needs to be rostered in every single league. So the fact that his roster rate is only at 33% right now, maybe it had to do with the Chiefs being on bye. Maybe it had to do with people not believing in the overall route share. I don't care what it is. If Juju Smith-Schuster is available in your league, you go aggressive on your bid. I had listed 20 to 25% last week. I'm not changing my bid because I still see the same upside scenario for Juju Smith-Schuster moving forward. Moving on to #2, we have Ray Davis of the Buffalo Bills, another guy I'd be willing to spend 20 to 25% of my fab on. And the reason why is that if we knew James Cook was out for a prolonged period of time, Ray Davis would be the no doubt #1 guy you would spend all of your fab on, because the role we saw in lieu of Cook being out of the lineup was that of a league-winning running back. We know the Bills' offense is going to be solid, and Ray Davis was a workhorse in this Bills' offense. 23 opportunities, over 18 PPR points in this game, and Ray Davis in that game on Monday Night Football had 60% of the snaps, 67% of the rushing attempts, and 47% of the team routes. Like I said, bell cow usage in a good offense. So at the minimum for the time being, I think he enters the Braylon Allen, Tyler Allgeier, which I'll talk about in a second, tier of implied handcuffs. But I do think with Cook's status being undetermined at this point, Ray Davis is a guy I'm willing to go aggressive on. Again, I think there's a real possibility from a standalone standpoint to begin with that this could end up being a Lions situation light, where Ray Davis maybe establishes himself as that between the tackles grinder to James Cook being the space back on this team. Ray Davis at this point has to be considered a key member of this Bills backfield. Again, I was a little bit lower coming into the week. I thought Ty Johnson would have a bigger role than he did, but with Ray Davis taking the role that he did, he has to be rostered in every single one of your fantasy leagues because, like I said, Cook misses time. Ray Davis is an RB1 in the rankings. But moving on to my number 3 pickup, we have Demario Douglas of the New England Patriots, rostered in 14% of sleeper leagues, and a guy I'd be willing to spend 10 to 15% of my fab on. With Demario Douglas, he was the main beneficiary of Drake May entering as the starting quarterback. He led the team in targets, scored a touchdown in this game, scored over 20 PPR points. And if they're going to be airing it out like they did with Drake May under center, that is a big, significant stock bump for Demario Douglas moving forward. Again, he's been the most consistent Patriots wide receiver all year, and he offers a ton of upside moving forward. Like I said, if Drake May is to be the quarterback for the rest of the season, Gerard Mayo went on record saying they want to work him into more two wide receiver sets because he, quite frankly, has been the best overall wide receiver on this team. He also mentioned something in the negative for Jalen Polk, saying so far that Demario Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, and Kendrick Bourne have been the 3 best wide receivers for the Patriots. Sounds like Jalen Polk is in the doghouse a little bit, maybe gets his snaps cut a little bit moving forward. And Demario Douglas has flat out ran with the opportunity. So with Demario Douglas, especially in PPR leagues, I think he needs to be rostered as a wide receiver 4 for the time being, with potential wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 upside if Drake May continues building off of that debut performance. Number 4, Xavier Legette of the Carolina Panthers, rostered in 42% of sleeper leagues. Another guy like Douglas, I'd be willing to spend 10 to 15% of my fab on. Other than leaving last week with an injury, he has been a full-time player each of the last 3 weeks. So before he got hurt, he was a full-time player last week, and in the other 2 weeks has gotten over 80% of the team routes and has been a top 36 wide receiver in fantasy. Again, it was a little bit of an injury scare last week, did come back in full. We are not worried about that injury moving forward. And with this Carolina offense, while we do know Deontay Johnson is the one, I think Xavier Legette has established himself as the clear number 2 weapon on this team, which is very good moving forward. And while Andy Dalton hasn't really looked the same in the last few weeks, Legette is everything we look for from an upside perspective in fantasy. Height, weight, speed, after the catch, type of utilization he's getting with Canales in this offense. I'm very excited for Xavier Legette. He is not with the standalone value right now, in my opinion, that a Demario Douglas would have, but I think he offers more upside for the rest of the season moving forward. Tyler Allgeier, running back of the Atlanta Falcons, comes in at my number 5 spot, rostered still in 40% of sleeper leagues. A guy that I still don't understand why he's not rostered in more leagues. I've been willing to spend 10 to 15% of my fab on Tyler Allgeier this week. The only reason I'm not spending more, of course, is that Bijan Robinson is fully healthy for the time being. Did have the great performance, 25 PPR points in his own right. But the reason why Allgeier makes this video is twofold. A, he showed Sunday that in certain game scripts, he has standalone value in this backfield, one that is very efficient running the football. And B, if anything were to happen to Bijan Robinson, like I mentioned with Ray Davis and James Cook, Tyler Allgeier would become an all-your-fab player. The reason why I prefer Davis is that Cook is currently dealing with an injury. But if Bijan Robinson, again, knock on wood, I'm hoping this doesn't happen, but if Bijan Robinson were to go down in week 7, were to go down in week 8, like I said, Allgeier becomes an all-your-fab type of player. And this is one of my favorite archetypes in fantasy football in the sense that while they don't have the most standalone value right now, I want players that can flat out win me my league. And Tyler Allgeier, if an injury were to happen to Bijan Robinson, has that type of upside. He's been efficient all year, about 5.6 yards per carry on this Falcons offense. And we saw this past week that when he's given a workload, he can operate as a team's RB1. I mean, we saw it literally the year before they drafted Bijan. When Allgeier was a rookie, he ran for over 1,000 yards. So with Allgeier, we have a proven track record. We have a talented, efficient player in a very good run scheme. So again, he's only my number 5 because Bijan Robinson is healthy. But like I said, I want to be getting ahead of the curve. I'm willing to spend 10 to 15% now, because if anything were to happen to Bijan, he would be a 100% of the fab player. Coming in at number 6 is Ty Chandler of the Minnesota Vikings, rostered in 35% of sleeper leagues. A guy I'd be willing to spend 5 to 10% of my fab on, and he would be higher flat out if Aaron Jones was expected to miss time. But Aaron Jones at this current point is expected to play on Sunday, which limits where I can put Chandler on this list. However, I do think he is a must-roster player, similar to Allgeier, similar to Ray Davis, in the sense that Minnesota's offense has looked great. Aaron Jones is a 29-year-old running back dealing with a hip injury. if Aaron Jones were to miss any time, like Tyler Chandler was a bell cow in lieu of Aaron Jones exiting that game. 61% of the snaps, 48% of the rushing attempts, 49% of the routes once Aaron Jones exited with injury. I think he's a clear bell cow running back. And like I said, any week that Aaron Jones is out, we could be talking about Ty Chandler as a top 12 to 15 running back on that week. Again, is he the most efficient option? Is he a better talent than Ray Davis and Tyler Allgeier? Not necessarily, in my opinion. Is he a better talent than even the next guy we're going to be talking about, Trey Benson? Not necessarily, in my opinion. But with that being said, this is a workhorse role on a good offense. This is a priority bench player. Number 7 pickup, Trey Benson of the Arizona Cardinals, 27% rostered in sleeper leagues. And it does sound like James Conner only suffered a minor ankle injury that he got it taped up for in that game on Sunday. But definitely monitor the status of James Conner moving forward. Again, it does sound like he's fully healthy. Does sound like he got put on the bench because of the game script rather than him being actually hurt. But make sure you monitor that, because with Trey Benson, he was my RB2 in this last draft cycle. He's been efficient all year when he's gotten touches. And if anything were to happen to James Conner, he is an absolute league winner. Again, I do think he has less standalone value than the other guys I've mentioned so far, but Trey Benson, again, the height, the weight, the speed, the tackle breaking ability, the big play ability, he had all of that at his time at Florida State, and in spurts this year on limited touches, he has shown that in the NFL. So, like I said, James Conner has never finished a season in his NFL career. If Trey Benson were to get a spot start, I'd most likely rank him higher than some of the other guys on this list, but because James Conner is expected to be a minor injury, he does rank in at number 7. And then we'll talk about 8 and 9 together because they're very similar cases. Bub Means comes in as my number 8, wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints. Very simple for me. Bub Means earned 8 targets in lieu of both Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed being banged up in this game. Chris Olave leaving with his concussion. Shaheed, after the game, reported that he is suffering from a concerning knee injury. Both are expected to be out on Thursday. And like I said, Bub Means, rookie wide receiver, 6'2", 8 targets this past week. If both those wide receivers are out, I understand it's a concerning outlook for this offense. But from a pure volume standpoint, especially in the time where we're all dealing with injuries and bye weeks, I think Bub Means can be a sneaky flex spot in your lineup. Again, I'm not going to go overboard, or I'm not going to spend, 10, 15, 20+% of my fab on Bub Means. But if you can get him for a couple bucks, put him in your flex spot because you're dealing, like I said, with injuries or bye weeks, I think you could do a lot worse at the wide receiver position. And the same thing can be said for Michael Wilson. Again, the reason why I do have Means over Wilson is that A, 2 of the wide receivers in his core are injured. Only 1 is for Michael Wilson. And B, with Bub Means, I think there's a little bit more untapped upside, whereas with Michael Wilson, we kind of know what he is. Again, I still think he needs to be rostered with Marvin Harrison Jr. dealing with his own concussion. And he scored double-digit PPR points in 3 of his last 4 games. Again, nothing more than really a bye-week apocalypse start fill-in, but at the same time, a guy that probably should be rostered in the majority of your leagues. 0 to 5% should be able to get it done. Finally, at number 10, a guy that also would be higher if there was more negative reports about his teammates, Isaac Guerrendo of the San Francisco 49ers. Very simply, if he were to get a spot start on the Niners, this is the best running back situation in the NFL. The unfortunate part, though, is it does sound like Jordan Mason is dealing with a minor AC joint sprain, A, and B, it does sound like Christian McCaffrey will be making his season debut sooner rather than later. Again, if your league mate wants to spend 10, 15, 20+% of their fab on Guerrendo because he looked good on Thursday night and because they expect Mason and McCaffrey to be out long term, I would let my league mate get Isaac Guerrendo on the cycle. But if you could squeeze him for a couple bucks, again, it's still really uncertain with what's going on with those 2 running backs. I'm fine with it at that price. Don't overspend. I know he looked good. I know he was damn efficient. But assuming that Mason and McCaffrey are back in this backfield, there's not much left of the pie for Isaac Guerrendo moving forward. But either way, if you guys enjoyed, make sure you leave a like down below. If you guys want access to all of our weekly rankings moving forward, there is one of 2 ways you can get it right now. First way, Underdog Fantasy, promo code FSC. If you sign up and first deposit at least $10, make 1 play on the site, you will get access to our weekly rankings moving forward. The other way, flockfantasy.com, promo code FSC. You will get 30% off of any site-wide package and a 7-day free trial on the site if you sign up with code FSC. Make sure you go get access. Again, the Weekly Rankings Manifesto is the best resource for your fantasy football season in 2024. With that being said, peace out. Good luck on the waiver wire. Comment your biggest fab decisions down below.